Today, I put out a LinkedIn post about the 5 levels of ego that every salesperson, but also this applies to everybody, can benefit from understanding how to leverage and utilize in a wide range of repertoire so that you don't end up just being like a fixed person. Like, this is me. I only am one way, because life is versatile. You need to have multiple different types of approaches and responses to things as the thing dictates. So if someone's being rude to you, you need to match that energy and know what you're going to need to do, how you're going to dial up or minimize your ego in order to respond the best way in that scenario. So let's go through the 5 levels of ego. The first level, I would say, is low ego. It's the lowest level of ego, which is like complete capitulation, complete supportive role, complete admiration, complete flattery. This is what I call the sycophantic approach, which is like, absolutely, oh my gosh, yeah, yeah, it's very empathetic, it's very agreeable. This is the lowest level of ego that you can go. And it's very useful if you're trying to woo people to get on your side, to like you, to feel aligned. It is a very useful skill and frame of mind to be in. The second level is just, I call it slightly higher ego. So this is where you still are trying to be very, very pleasant, but now you're starting to slightly push back just a little bit. To be fair, though, I do think that it is pretty reasonable if XYZ feels XYZ type of way. Wouldn't you agree? I hope you can see where I'm coming from. This is the slightly nicer, a little bit harsher version of the previous ego state. Now you're starting to put out a little bit of your own thoughts, your opinions, and start lightly pushing back. So it's still relatively harmless, still relatively lower ego, but it's higher than completely low ego. The third state is what is known as medium ego, just like kind of regular level of ego. It's also like the neutral state, where this is just matter of fact. Now it's like, all right, this is kind of sort of the situation. This is going on. What do you think? Right? This is the sort of like just neutral. It kind of is what it is. Extremely just delivering the statement of fact in a way that, again, it doesn't have an emotional tone to it. It just is what it is. Unfortunately, this is what has happened. It's very much kind of inching into the, okay, we're not going to be nice anymore. We're not going to just handle everything with kids' gloves right now. It's the parental tone. It kind of is what it is right now. It's that parent kind of vibe where now we're starting to kind of deliver the statements as such. The next level up is now what I call strong ego. This is where you just flat out start letting people know that you're going to be confrontational now. Now it's an active effort towards being confrontational. Now it's saying very firmly, this is the situation that's going on. I do believe that XYZ is the case. Now, this is where you're very much advocating and persevering in pushing your own thoughts above others a little bit. Now you're just starting to actually advocate for your own thoughts and your suggestions and present solutions and start getting very hands-on in the discussion. So it's when you start saying things like, you know, at this stage, I think it's incredibly important to consider XYZ factors. And I do think that it would be a missed opportunity if we don't XYZ ABC, right? This is now starting to become a little bit more salesy, a little bit more pushy. Now, the most aggressive state, I call this the me over you state, the overpowering stage now. Now, this can be done in a passive or aggressive manner. So you can say, I wouldn't agree with that statement at all. That now you're starting to be actively unlikable, the total opposite of the first state, which is the low ego state of being completely amenable. Now, the last state is completely throwing all of that out the window. I don't care if you believe in what I have to say or not. Genuinely, I don't. Again, like I said, it doesn't have to be delivered in an argumentative, mean manner. In fact, a lot of times when I get into this zone, I'm extra calm. But I will say some wild shit. At this stage, I will say something like, This is why I always say junior recruiters have no idea what they're doing. They don't understand the game. They haven't been in the game long enough. So it's up to me to explain to you kind of how this situation works. It's very neutral. I'm not yelling at you, but my language is extremely strong because I'm telling you that I know more. My expertise actually gives me more knowledge and more understanding than yours does. I mean, this is what I do for a living, for God's sakes. I will say stuff like that. So this is what I call the utmost, most aggressive form of putting someone down, right? Like stating the case that not only am I disagreeing with you, but I'm actively shutting you down in a very calm manner. Again, you don't have to start screaming because I think this is where most people go off the rails. When people get into this state, they start screaming and yelling and losing their shit. And when you do that, you lose credibility. So if you don't want to lose credibility, it's important to keep it in your pants and to deal with this negative instance, likely it's a negative instance, that you have to put your foot really, stamp your foot down and say enough is enough. I have to stand up for my candidate. I've had this conversation with clients before where I'm a headhunter, right? So I'll be like, unfortunately, I disagree with you fully. I believe that you're reading into this person completely wrong. And the reason why I say that is this and this and this and this, right? You can totally do that if it comes to that. Of course, everybody has a different choice of how they want to approach all 5 levels of ego. Because sometimes I'll also be in a very charged situation where I do have to yell and scream, whether that's with my parents, whether that's with my family, whether that's with somebody who abuses me on the street or someone who is actively abusing me. Then I have to pull out all the stops to stop the bullies from continuing along their war rampage. My point in sharing with you these 5 different ego states is that I want to encourage you to start thinking about what am I going to do? How am I going to sound? What is the energy that I'm going to dig into in those moments? Because you need to be versatile. As a top communicator, you need to understand how each of these 5 stages play into your selling journey, into your communication pattern, into how you're going to interact with and connect with people of all different demographics. And that is when you know you become a master communicator, is we can dial into any of these 5 states without breaking a sweat, without getting extremely anxious, without getting very worried. The goal is to master these states so that you can just slide into them, call upon these powers as necessary. So what did you think of this? How do you think it plays into who you are as a person? And before you answer that, I will leave you with one more overarching theme and piece of advice as it relates to this training. Do not, for a minute, only give yourself one definition of who you are. This is called being too fixed on a personality type. You need to be a chameleon. You have to be able to dial into the strong ego, the me over you ego, as much as the medium level of ego, as well as the low level of ego and the slightly higher level of ego. You need to be able to dial into any of these energies without self-defining as only one way or the other, as in, well, I'm just an argumentative person. Or the other way, well, I'm just a very non-confrontational person. I'm sorry, I can never do that. Those words are the kiss of death. Never say never. Don't be like, I can't do that. That's just not me. Stop. This isn't a virtue. It is a limitation.